Hello, my name is Brian Zanti,
And I'm Jameson Ordway.
and we're with the Turing School of Software and Design, and we're back at it. We're getting back into Setlist, and we're going to be talking about some forms today. So let's get right into it. So Jameson is going to drive for us here, and I am going to navigate. And so the first thing is to clone down the repo if we don't have it already.
Yep, and I would do that with this copying here. And I just remembered I should have this. So I think the main thing is for me to just pull down your most recent changes, right, Brian?
Yeah, so we'll do a get status. I saw we're on the song show branch, so let's go ahead and check out the main branch. And let's go ahead and do a get pull origin main. And cool, we've got a lot of files. Can we run RSpec here? So now that we have tests, we should be able to just run the whole test suite. We get some issues here. Can you do a bundle? Yeah. And do another RSpec.
That's better.
There we go. Yep. So always good idea to bundle. It said it couldn't find something, so bundle, that should install it if it can't find it. Awesome. So let's go ahead and copy and paste that user story. So our first task is going to give our app the ability to create a new artist. So let's make a file. We want a TDD, so let's make a test file for spec features artists new _ spec.rb. And let's go ahead and open that up.
There we go.
And let's go ahead and paste that story text in here. So we've got, as a visitor, when I visit the artist index and I click on new artist, then my current path is /artist/new. And I fill in the artist name and I click create artist, I am redirected to the artist show page. Great. Okay, so let's go and require a Rails helper. Let's make an rspec.describe block. And let's say we're describing the artist creation. And we'll give that a block. And let's say we'll say it links to the new page from the artist index. So just reading my story, that's the first thing here. It says when I visit the artist index and I click on new artist. So we'll do that first. All right, so we'll give that a do an end block. And so just following the story text, we're going to visit the artist index. So let's visit and then /artists. And then we should be able to click on, and let's actually make this click link. I think we used click on in the last video. Click link will specifically look for a link. Click on would look for a link or button. So we'll click link and then a string of new artist. So this is Capybara clicking on this button for us, and then we would expect the current path to equal /artists/new.
So
looks good. Let's go and run the test. So we get no route matches get to /artists. Interesting, we don't have an artist index page yet. Okay, well, we can make one. So let's open up the routes file. And let's make a get to /artists. And this is going to route to the artist controller and then the index action inside the artist controller. So we'll run that again, and hopefully we get past the routing error. And now we get uninitialized constant artist controller. So let's go ahead and touch app controllers artists _ controller.rb. And let's run the test now. Because I really want to see the unable to auto load error, which tells us that we spelled the file name correctly. So that looks great. So let's open up our controller and we'll make our controller class. So class artist controller, which inherits from application controller. And let's run the test again. Hopefully get past that error. And so now we don't have an action, so we'll make an index method inside our controller. Run it one more time. The next thing I would expect is to not have a view. And so that's what we get. So can we double check in our file tree? Do we have app views artists? We do not. So let's make that directory. That's where by default Rails is going to look for this view. So app views artists, and then inside that, it's going to look for index.html.erb. So the folder name is the name of the controller. The file name is the name of the action. Great. So now we have a view. Let's run the test again. So our last error was no view. Let's see if it has the view. So now it says unable to find link new artist. So at the top of this view, let's go ahead and make our link. So let's make a visible ERB tag or a rendered ERB tag. And we'll use a view helper link to. So we'll do link _to, and this will create an HTML link for us. Let's pass it the first argument of the string new artist. So this is the text the user would see. And then we'll do a second argument for the path that's going to take the user to, which should be /artist/new. Looks good. Let's go ahead and run that. And so now that we're trying to go to a new path, we're getting another routing error for no route matches get to /artist/new. So let's go and make that. So we'll do get /artist/new. And this will route to the artist controller, new action. Then run that again. So we created the controller, so I'd expect it to go straight to undefined action. So the action new could not be found. So now we'll make def new inside this controller and run that again. So now we get another no view error. So let's make it. In app views artist, we'll make new.html.erb. And we'll run that again. And now our tests are passing. So this is great. We've set up the pages that we need, and they are very minimal. So now we can start TDDing out what should be on this new page. So let's make another test here. We could put this inside the same test. I would prefer to just make the tests as small and focused as possible. So we'll make another one for it. Can create a new artist. Perfect. And let's visit let's actually visit /artist/new. So we don't need to go through clicking the link again. We'll just go straight to that new page. And then reading my user story. So I fill in the artist name. So let's say fill_in. And then a string of name. And then a second argument for fill in, which is going to be a keyword argument of with : and then the value is going to be, and we can make this whatever we want. So let's make it prints. Great. So this is us filling in this form, which we haven't created. So after we fill in the form, we should be able to submit the form by saying click on. And then we'll pass that a string of create artist. Let's change click on to click button. We saw click link earlier in the previous test. Let's show click button in this test. So then after we click that button, my story says, then I am redirected to this new artist show page. So let's expect the current path to equal. And we'll say slash artists slash, and then we need to know what our new artist's ID is here. So there's a couple ways we can do it. Let's, on the previous line, let's find this artist ID by saying new artist ID, so new underscore artist underscore ID. So we're making a local variable equals, and then capital A artist, so our artist model, dot last, which should get the most recently created artist, which hopefully is our new artist, dot ID here. We'll pull out the ID from the object. So then when we visit that page, let's actually change our quotes to double quotes so that we can interpolate our new artist ID as our dynamic segment. And then I would also expect that page. So if we're on that page, I would expect that page to have the content of Prince. So string Prince. So that was the name that we gave our new artist. We should see that name on their show page. All right, so we've got our test. I would like to, can we put a new line after, in between line 23 and 24?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of separating out the execution versus the expectation. So filling in the form, clicking the button, that's what the user would do. And then lines 25 through 27, that's what they would expect. So kind of making some separation there. Okay, let's go ahead and run our test and see what happens. So we get unable to find field name that is not disabled. Okay, so this makes sense. We're trying to fill in a form, but our view is empty. So let's go ahead and open up our view. Our new view, yep. And let's go ahead and make our form. So let's make a rendered ERB tag. And we'll use a form underscore with Rails view helper. So just like link to, this view helper is going to create some HTML for us. Form with is a little more useful than a link to, because a form is a much bigger chunk of HTML. So this saves us a lot of work here. So form with, and then form with is going to take a couple keyword arguments. So the first one's going to be URL. So we'll say URL colon. And so this is the path where this form is going to submit to. And by convention, if we're creating a new artist, this should submit to /artists. And then the second keyword argument we're going to add is for the method. And so the method, again, by convention, should be a post. So we'll pass it the symbol or the string, either way would work. We'll pass it the symbol of post. And a post indicates we're creating. So together, post /artist indicates we're creating a new artist. Let's also give it a third keyword argument. This one would be optional, but local of true. The form with will not work very well in our development environment unless we put this local true option. Great. So now form with is going to take a block. So we'll give it a do. And then the block variable of form. So this block variable essentially represents our form. Technically, it would be a form builder object, but it is the form. Let's go ahead and end this. So every time we make a block, we want to make a do and an end. And so now inside this block is where we fill out the body of the form. So let's make another rendered ERB tag. And we'll say form.label, and we'll pass it a symbol of name. So form represents our form object. Form.label is saying create a label for this form. And so we're going to label it name. And we'll make another rendered ERB tag right below that. And we'll say form.text field. So very similar here, this is saying create a text field for this form, and we'll pass that a symbol of name as well. All right, so let's go ahead and run our test. Our last error was that it could not find a field name that is not disabled. We made that field. Let's see if it works. And sure enough, it does. We got past our error. So now we don't have our create artist button. So underneath that last text field we made, let's make another render DRB tag for form.submit. So this will create our submit button, and then we can pass it a string of create artist to create that label for that button. So let's run our test again, see if we're past that error. And we are. So at this point, we've submitted the form. It's trying to post to /artist, but we don't have that route yet. So let's go to the routes and let's make a post route. So all of our routes up to this point have been get. Now we're making our first post route. So a post indicates that we are creating something. So we're going to post to /artist. And we're going to route this to the artist create action. So let's run that. So now it doesn't have the create action inside the controller. So let's make that. And let's run it again. Interesting. So our next error is undefined method ID for nil class. Let's dig on this a little bit. I can see in the spec trace that this is happening on new spec line 25. So when we're trying to do artist.last.id, there are no artists in the database. So what that tells me is that our create action didn't actually create an artist, which makes sense. We didn't put any code in there. So we need to put some code in there. So let's go ahead and put a pry inside that create action. And let's see what we have available to us. So anytime that I pry into my create action, I want to look at the params. So the params is you can think of it as like a bucket that collects all of the data that's being passed during a request. So since we got to this create action from submitting a form, our form data should be in the params object or the params bucket. And there it is. We can see name prints as that second key value pair there. And so this params object acts like a hash. So we should be able to access the name key with the bracket notation. And we can pass a symbol or a string here. Symbol name will work. And so let's hit enter and we'll see that will give us our data for prints. Great. So now we have the data we need to create an artist. So let's go ahead and use that on line at the top of our create action. Let's go ahead and do artist.create. And then we'll say name, another keyword argument here, name, and then params name, just like you had in pry. So we take that data that we got and we use it to create our new artist object. Let's also save that to a variable. Let's call it artist. And let's move the pry right below that line. And we'll run that. Let's exit out of our pry and run the test again. So hopefully hopefully now we can look at our artist local variable and see that it's storing our new artist object. And yes, it is. It looks like we were successfully able to create an artist object. It's got a name, it's got an ID. It looks good to go. All right, let's go ahead and take out that pry and run the test and see what happens. Okay, so it looks like this failure is on line 26. So we expect the current path to be this artist show page, but it says it got /artist. So what's happening is that the path that it's picking up on is the path that we submitted the form to, which was /artists. We need to now tell our app to, after it creates the artist, to go to that artist show page. And we're going to do that with a command called redirect to. So let's do a redirect to. And then we'll tell it what page we're redirecting to. We'll do /artists. slash, and then let's interpolate our artist ID. Let's run the test again. And now we get no route matches get to slash artist slash 19. Interesting. Let's check out our routes file. All right. So we don't have this show page set up right now. Let's go back to the test. Let's go to the new spec. And let's say rather than expecting this to appear on the artist show page, let's actually just take out that interpolation of the new artist ID.
Okay.
And we'll expect this to land back on the artist index. So we don't need line 25 anymore. That's a good example of how you would do that if you were expecting to be back on a show page. Yeah, so we'll edit our test expectations a little bit. Let's run the test. And we'll probably get that same error for no route. So let's go back to the controller and now redirect to just slash artists. And let's run that. And so now it says expected to find text prints in new artist. Let's open up the index.html.erb. And this artist index we made earlier doesn't yet have the ability to show new artists. So let's go ahead and add that in. Can we split the screen between this view and the controller? Cool. So we want to show our artists on our artist index. So what we're going to have to do is in the index action, we're going to have to grab all those artist objects so that we can pass them to the view. So we'll say at artists equals artist.all. And now in the view, we should be able to make a not rendered ERB tag. And we'll say at artist.each to loop over all of our artists. Let's give it a block and a block variable of artist. So we'll get access to each artist. We'll go ahead and end that block. And then inside that each, let's make a paragraph tag. And then a rendered ERB tag to show each artist name. Perfect. And on the opening P tag, put the bracket, closing bracket. Yeah. Great. Let's go ahead and run this test. And now it's passing.
Nice.
All right. So now that we've got our test passing, everything's passing in our testing environment. Let's check it out in our development environment. So let's run our Rails server. And we'll go to the browser. And let's go to our localhost 3000/artists. And so there is our new artist button. So let's click on that. And let's go ahead and make, let's make an artist. Let's make Britney Spears. And click our button. And it takes us back to our artist index and we see our new artist. Great. Let's open up the Chrome developer tools. So you can double click and do inspect. And I think there's also a Command Option I will work as well. So what the developer tools are allowing us to do here is look at the HTML that we're seeing. So if we look at this, let's expand the body tag. We can see our link created. So I see ahref equals /artist/new, and then new artist inside that A tag. So that is an HTML link. Jameson, can you open up the view? Maybe if we could split the screen.
Oh yeah, the view and editor. 1 second.
Yeah,
How is
perfect.
that?
Perfect. So we can see on the left, our code in Ruby and Rails, we're using this Rails view helper link to, And what that creates is an HTML A tag with an href attribute. Great. Let's click on the new artist button now. We'll click on that link, and that'll take us to our form. And let's go and do the same thing. We'll look at our form, and then on the left, can we open up our new view? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So same thing here. We can see what our view helpers are creating for us. So we can see that top line form in HTML, the URL is referred to as the action, and the method is referred to the method. And we can see our inputs in there. We can see our name input. We can see our submit button input, and we can see a couple things that we didn't make. Like we can see the authenticity token input. We can see a UTF-8 input. So the view helpers are really nice for this purpose because they will create some additional things that every form in Rails is going to need. And we don't have to worry about creating that. Rails just creates them for us. Great. So now that everything is working in both environments, let's go ahead and push this code up. So let's close out our Rails server. Let's do a git status. And so we can see a bunch of things that we've changed. We've changed the routes. We added a controller. We added some views. We added the new spec. That all looks good. So let's do a git add dot for adding all those files. And we'll do a git commit -m, and we'll say, oh, thank you. So we're on the main branch. Let's go ahead and check out a new branch. We can call it artist new. Cool. And now we'll commit that to this branch.
This will be adds artist new and create.
Perfect. And let's go ahead and push that to our origin and the artist new branch on our remote repository. All right, so one more thing before we move on, let's go back to the artist controller and let's do a little bit of refactoring here. So what we have on line 10 is artist.create. We pull out that name param from the params hash. And this is okay, but what will happen when we start to create models with more attributes, this line could get very, very long. So for instance, if the artist had a name and had years active, so it'd be years active, params years active, and then maybe they have an attribute called Grammy winner, and that one pulls in from the params, and maybe the artist actually has 10 more params that come from the form. So this really can get long and messy very quickly. Luckily, Rails gives us some nice handy syntax for pulling data out of the params hash and making key value pairs out of that. And that syntax is called strong params. So let's make a method at the bottom of this controller called def artist _ params. And inside this method, we're going to say params.permit name. And we'll pass name as a symbol. So this is a method. The artist params is a method. It's going to take our params object and it's going to call another method on that called .permit. And .permit is going to pull out that name key value pair. So using that, we can use that method to create our new artist. So we'll replace that line with artist params. So we call our artist params method. It handles pulling the data out of the artist params. And then what's really nice is that if we change what params we're passing over, we just have to change that method. We don't have to change our create method at all. Exactly. Let's go and run our test to make sure that that's still working. Looking good. Great. Let's go ahead and add that. submit it. And what we'll see as we keep moving forward is that we'll actually be able to reuse these strong params later to keep our code dry. So let's go ahead and push this up to our branch. And we should be good to go.
Cool. So now I have pushed up my work on the new artist branch, and Brian is going to be driving now. So he'll need to pull down that branch, and that way we can both be working on the same work in progress branch without merging it to main yet. So Brian, if you go to the repo here, we should be able to see what branches we have. And we can see artist new is there on GitHub. So if you go back over to your text editor and say git fetch, I believe will get us all the updated branches on the remote. And now we should be able to say get checkout artist _ new. So fetch will go and grab all the new changes from the GitHub remote from our origin. And with those changes, you now have access to the branch that I was working on, artist new. So we have this feature for creating a new artist, and the next thing we can add is the ability to edit an existing artist. And I have a user story here, and if you could copy that, we'll TDD this feature as well, and we'll be putting it in a new file. So I think we should go to the terminal and touch spec features artists edit _ spec.rb. And if we go and open that file, okay, then we can paste the user story in here and comment it out, and we can build our tests around this. Okay, so now the first thing we'll need to do is require a Rails helper. And then we can open up a new rspec.describe block. And let's call this the artist edit. And give it a do and an end. Inside there, let's go ahead and say it links to the edit page. And yep, a do and an end. And then let me think about how we want to do this. Right now, I think we have an artist index and not an artist show, but it would be, I think it would be good to have like an edit button next to the name of the artist on the index. So we could probably inside of this it block just visit /artists. Cool. Then maybe we on a new line say click link edit. But maybe this would be better as a button. It would give us a chance to work with buttons. So let's call that click button instead. And then after we click that edit button, we would expect on a new line, we would expect the current path to equal, and that would be /artists. We'll need double quotes here for that path. And then we need to know which edit we're going to be, we need to know which edit button and which artist we're going to be clicking. So we're going to interpolate here, but we can come back to that. So before we even get to the artist page, we need to set up this test with an artist record. So right there, yeah, underneath the do, we could say artist equals artist.create, capital artist.create. And we can give it a name of like Prince. Cool. And then when we click the button edit, I think it would be nice to interpolate the name of the artist into each button, so there's no ambiguity in which edit button we're clicking. So that could be edit in double quotes. And then we could interpolate the artist name by doing our interpolation and saying artist.name. Great. So then on line 20, we would want to interpolate artist.id after our artist slash. Exactly. I think this is a good place to pause and run our test. Okay. Unable to find button, edit prints, that is not disabled. So we are getting to the artist index page and oh, one thing I forgot, could we put a bang after the create on line 14? This will just make sure that our artist record is created and nothing fails there with like the actual creation of the object. And if anything were to go wrong, it would not fail silently, meaning with this bang, it will actually throw us an error so that we can see our artist wasn't created. So if we run the test again, and we get the same error, what that will tell me is that we have an artist in our test database, but the error is somewhere else, which it looks like that's exactly what happened. Cool. So now I think let's go over to the artist index view. And next to every artist name now, we want to also have a button that will allow us to edit that artist. So yeah, inside of that P tag, could we do a rendered ERB tag? And we'll call that, we'll use the view helper button _2. And then I believe we can give it a argument of the string edit, and then we'll interpolate the name of the artist. Yeah, I think that should work fine. And then we'll do another argument with, I believe we can use a keyword argument method, and then the symbol of post.
The slash artist.
Right, so actually let's, that second keyword, can we do the second keyword argument again? And I think that needs to be, so let's add another argument that'll be a keyword argument of URL. And then we'll give it the string of, with a double quote, yeah, it would be slash artists slash, and then we'll interpolate artist.id right here. And then one more slash after the interpolation for edit. And I believe we'll need one more keyword argument to specify that we want a get request, because button 2, if I remember correctly, defaults to post. So here we'll give it the keyword argument method and then a symbol of get. And let's run the test and see where that gets us. Okay, so it's expecting our current path to be the artist show page, I believe, and or well, not the artist show page, but the URI of artists and then the ID. And we are just getting the artist index. So it seems like this URL isn't going anywhere. Could we go back to the test real quick? And I might be inclined to try something called save an open page. Use Launchy right before we get to line 18 and click the button. I'm just kind of curious at this point to see how the button came out in the HTML that we just wrote. So if we put save an open page here and run the test again, we'll get to look at that in the browser. And do you mind inspecting this page by right-clicking and looking at the DevTools? And I'm interested in seeing what HTML was rendered for that button to edit prints. So if we expand form, and then we have button 2 with a method of post, and then we have this URI with some weird stuff in it. So it looks like maybe the keyword argument of method get is not working the way that I was hoping it would. Okay, so we see here that something with our button 2 view helper didn't quite do what we wanted. We still have a method of post. So let's go back over to that view. And then could we try getting rid of the keyword argument for the URL, meaning just take out the URL colon and give the path as this second argument, and run the test again and see if anything different happens. Yeah, so now if we go inspect this button, or yeah, let's inspect the button just to see if that shows up in the HTML any differently. And now we can see that we have a class button to method get, and our action looks more like the URI that we would want it to be. Cool. So what output did we get from running that test? We have no route matches, get artist, artist ID, edit. Cool. So I think maybe now we should go back to the spec and remove that save and open page so it doesn't keep popping open a new window every time we run it. And then could we open up the routes file? And we'll need to create a get /artist /:ID, which is a dynamic segment, and then another /edit. And that will go to artists and then edit. Cool. Can we run the test again? No route matches get artists, plural. Let's try it one more time.
I didn't know if I should fix it or just let you figure it out.
Yeah, I think that's good. Cool, thanks. And then now we are to the error I actually expected with the action edit couldn't be found. So could we go to the artist controller? And we'll just add a def edit. And run the test again. Cool. And now it's telling us that it can't find the view. So we'll need to touch a new file, touch app views artists. I think it's artists plural, right? And then edit.html.erb. And let's run that test one more time. Cool. And if we scroll up, we got expect current path to equal artist ID. And it looks like maybe that's something that we need to change in our test, because when we click on this button to go to an edit form, we do want the URL to specify the resource and the ID of which one, and then that we are on the edit page. So can we go back to that spec and change our expectation? So instead of expecting the current path to be artist ID, we'll add after the artist ID /edit. Okay, let's run the test again. And that's all passing, which is great. So now we have a test that makes sure that we can go to the artist index and click on a button to edit a particular artist and be taken to that form. So now if we go back up to this user story, and the next step is to enter a new name for the artist and click a button to update it. And then we have some expectations to be redirected back to the artist index and see the updated name. So could we create a new it block underneath the one that we just finished? We'll say it can edit the artist. And we'll get that a do and an end. And for this example, maybe what we could maybe we could create an artist like we did on line 14. We can say artist equals artist.create. And we'll just make a typo in the name. So maybe we'll do like Prince, but we'll forget the E on the end or something like that. Yeah, that looks great. And then instead of going to the artist index and clicking on the edit button, we'll just visit /artists. And this will need to be double quotes on our URI so we can interpolate the artist ID.
That didn't work.
Cool. Yeah, and then we'll just we'll interpolate artist.id, and then we'll say /edit. And then we should be able to fill in, so the capybara keyword, fill in a string, I believe, of name. And then we'll have another argument, keyword argument with, and then we'll pass it the corrected string of Prince with the E on the end. And then we should be able to, on another line, click buttons, click underscore button. Yep. And we'll give that the string of update artist. And after that, we should be able to expect current path to equal /artists. I believe that's what the user story said, to go back to the artist index. And then we'll also expect page to have content, and we'll pass it the string of prints spelled correctly. And it just occurred to me that we could maybe make this test a little bit more robust by testing that before we go and edit this artist, that it says that the artist index has it listed as Prince misspelled. So maybe in this case, we do want to visit /artists on line 26. And before we go to anything else, we'll say expect page to have content. And we'll say Prince without the E. So that's our Aranis name. And then in order to complete the test and actually go through and fill out the form and update, we'll have to click button edit Prince, I believe. And I'm not super concerned about testing that we get to the correct path. I just want to be able to get to the actual form, fill it in, and then test that once we click submit, or once we click update artist, we are back on the artist index page and we have the correct name that we submitted with this update. Cool. So could we go ahead and run this test and see what error we get? Unable to find field name that is not disabled. So I have a guess as to why this is happening. I just remember from our other tests that we said fill in name and we used a capital keyword name. Could we just try that and see if that gets us past that error? It did not. So it didn't find that one either. Yeah, but I do think I seem to remember that Capybara likes to have it as capital. So let's continue on and go look at the next thing. That would be the view. So we tested that we could get to the edit form, but we didn't actually put anything in that form. So let's go ahead and open up that view. And we'll be doing another form with here for the edit. So we should do a rendered ERB tag. And it'll be form underscore with, and then a keyword argument of URL. And I believe this URL will be, it'll be /artists. And we'll need the artist to be able to interpolate the ID after that. So artist ID. Let's make it an instance variable and call .id on the end. Yep, exactly. And then let's give it another argument, a keyword argument of method patch, and that'll be a symbol. Yep. And I think we'll also need the local true keyword argument. And let's go ahead and give this a do and end with a block variable of form. Okay, so we can go ahead and run the test. And I'm not sure if we'll actually get a different error here or not, but let's try it. So now we actually get two errors. And the first one is undefined method ID for nil class. So that is happening on line 1 of the edit HTML ERB, which makes sense to me because we haven't set up an artist in our controller for this page. So let's go ahead and open up the artist controller. And in the edit action, we'll need to look up the record that we're planning to update. And we'll do this using the params hash, again, the params object hash. So let's set this up as an instance variable like we did in our view at artist equals. And we'll say artist.find. And then params, and with hash notation, we'll say params ID. And like we saw in the create section of this video, the params hash is kind of like a bucket that takes all the data that we are dealing with in our request, in our HTTP request, and makes it available to us in the controller. So Brian, if you could put a binding.pry between lines 14 and 15, I'll try to demonstrate this as we work. So then if you run the test again, we hit our pry, and could you do params? Yeah. So here we have an ID, and the value is, I think that says 86. And could you just do the artist.find params ID like we have to the right of the equal sign on the next line?
I could do a fancy thing here. I could
Yeah.
say play -L, and I want to run line 16.
Oh, that's cool.
And I'm taking 16 from this right here.
Nice. That is very handy. Cool. So that finds the artist that we want to update. So yeah, let's exit out of this test. I think we might have to exit again. Yeah. Cool. So now we're back to this unable to find field name that is not disabled. So could we take out the pry from the edit action and go back to our view, the edit view? So this makes sense because we haven't created any fields for our form. We'll need to do a rendered ERB tag, and we'll say form.label, and we'll call this with the string, and we'll call this name by saying, yeah, a symbol of name. And then we'll do a new line in another rendered ERB tag, and we'll say form.text field with a symbol of name as well. And let's go ahead and run the test. So we got past the unable to find name that was not disabled, and now we're at another one, unable to find button update artist that is not disabled. So we'll need to add in another rendered ERB tag with a form.submit. And we can give that a label by passing it an argument of a string that says update artist. Cool. Can we run the test one more time? Okay, so now we get a no route matches patch artist ID. Can we go to the routes file next? And here we'll need to add a route called, and it'll be a patch to artists :ID. And this will go to the artist controller and the update action. Great, let's run the test again. So now the action update could not be found for artist controller. So we'll need to go over to the artist controller and add that update method. Let's run the test again and see what we get. And it says expected current path to equal artists. So we'll definitely, what this is telling me is that we'll need a redirect to go to the, like we'll need to tell it which page we want to redirect to. But I also just want to, I guess before we get there, let's put a binding.pry here. And let's run the test. And I'd like to see what we have in params. So we have a patch method, the name of Prince, and the commit being like what we have in our submit button, I believe. The action is going to update. We have the right ID. So this all looks good. But could you call, well, before we exit this pry, could you call artist.all? So if we see here, our artist name hasn't actually been updated, and we'll need to do something similar in here to what we did in the edit. So below the binding.pry, could we say at artist? Yeah.
Do you mind if I take the shortcut?
That's fine with me. Cool. And then on another line, we'll call at artist.update. And I believe we can use the strong params that we refactored earlier by just passing this an argument of artist_params. And yeah, I don't think that this artist needs to be an instance variable. So could we try taking off those @ signs and take out the binding.pry and get out of our test get out of our pry in the terminal, I mean, and let's run the test again and see what we get. Okay, what do we have? Okay, so now we're at that redirect that I was mentioning. I think we can just underneath line 20, we can say redirect _2 and then / artists in a string. Let's run the test. Okay, could we open the test back up? I want to make sure I didn't forget anything there. We are testing that it had the old content, and then we're filling everything in. We're testing that the path is what we want, and we're testing that the new content is there. I think this looks pretty good to me as far as like a test and TDD and looking at all this in our test environment. But it would be good to also check this out in the development and on our actual browser. So could we start our Rails server? And then go to Chrome, to our browser, and we'll just type in localhost 3000 / artists. Oh, migrations are pending. So I think this means we'll have to go and stop the Rails server and run Rails DB :migrate. Okay, what do we have here? Relation songs already exists. So I'm wondering if the best solution here would be to drop, create, and migrate again. Does that sound right to you, Brian?
Yeah, and what's going on here is that I have different copies of setlist. So my current database is seeing the other version. So it's trying to run these migrations, even though they have already been run on a different version. So yeah, just a reset of everything. So what was it? Rails DB drop?
Drop, yep. And then since we dropped that, we'll need to do a Rails DB create, yeah. And now we should be safe to do Rails DB migrate. And that looks much better. So can we start up the Rails server again and try to visit that page in the browser? Cool. So we'll need to create an artist before we can edit one. So let's walk through that real quick. Say new artist, and maybe we'll make an erroneous artist. Yeah. And now we should be able to click edit Prince and give the real name Prince with the C on the end and click update. And now that shows up on our artist index page. So can we go back over to the text editor? And I think we should make these strong params, the artist params, we should make that a private method. Could you talk a little bit about what that means and how we would do it?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm going to use this keyword private. And you might have noticed that as I was putting in these methods, I was intentionally putting in edit and update above artist params. So the way that this works is that when you use this keyword private in a class, in a Ruby class, which our controllers are Ruby classes, everything below those methods are defined as private methods. Private methods are only available inside the class they're defined in. So because we only need to use this method, artist params, inside this controller, that is a good use case for private methods. Any methods that would need to be accessed from outside the class, you wouldn't want to be private.
And this is a security advantage to make this method private, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would also say it's good encapsulation.
Very cool. Okay, so I think we are done with this feature. Let's go ahead and stop our Rails server, and we'll do a get status. So we have some changes to our artist controller. We have changes to the artist index. We also changed our config routes. We have a new edit view, so the artist edit HTML at ERB, and a new test, which was the artist edit spec. So those all look like changes we would want to keep. Could we double check what branch you're on? Get branch. Okay, so we're on artist new. So now we can do a get add, and I think we want to keep all those changes. So just get add dot, I think is fine. And then we'll just commit that with get commit -m, and then I don't know, adds edit functionality to artists or something like that. Great. So now if you do a get push origin artist _new, then I should be able to pull down the branch with your changes and continue working.
All right, so Jameson is back in the driver's seat. Let's go ahead and pull the code down from GitHub. So let's do a git status. And I see on branch artist new. We could also do a git branch to confirm that we're on that same branch. Two different ways to check what branch you're on. So we're already on the branch, so we don't need to fetch it. So let's pull the changes down into this branch. So let's do a git pull origin artist underscore new. So from our remote origin and the artist new branch. And we see create mode, we see some file changes. It looks like we should have those changes. Let's just double check. Do we have our edit spec that we just made? I'd see it in your file tree there.
Oh yeah, there it is.
So I think we're good to go. Great, so let's go ahead and work on our next feature, which is going to be the ability to delete an artist. So let's go ahead and make a new spec file for spec features artists delete. Let's make it destroy underscore spec.rb. And we'll go ahead and open that up and let's drop that user story in there. So as a visitor, when I visit the artist index and I click a button delete next to an artist, then I am redirected back to the artist index page and I no longer see that artist. Great. Okay, let's require a Rails helper. And let's make a rspec.describe block and we'll describe destroying an artist. And then we'll make an if block inside there. And we'll say it can delete the artist from the index page. All right, so inside our test body, let's go ahead and make an artist that we want to delete. So we'll say artist equals artist.create. And we'll stick with the name of Prince. Let's visit the index, so visit/artists. Let's click button, and we'll pass it the string of delete. And then following my user story, we would expect to be redirected, so expect current path to equal, and we're redirected back to the artist index, so it should equal /artists. And then it says I no longer see that artist, so let's expect the page to not have content of the string Prince. Great. Let's go and run that test. And our first error is that Copybar cannot find this button. So let's go ahead and make it. Let's go to our view and let's create, let's put each of these, let's put each of these on their own line inside this p tag. And let's make a third line here for another button too. And the string identifier for this is going to be delete. And then we will, let's go and run that and see what that does. So unlike our edit button, we kind of glossed over some of the button to functionality. Let's dig into this button to a little bit more. So it's saying expected not to find text Prince in new edit. So this is not working. Can we put a save and open page right before where we have click button delete? And we'll run this test and we should see this pop up in a web browser. And we can see our delete button there. Let's open up the DevTools and let's inspect this button. And we'll expand that form. And what we can see, could you split the screen, Jameson, between the browser and the view, just like we did before? And maybe if we could make the browser a little bigger, or at least the DevTools a little bigger. I think you can Command plus it. Yeah. So just like we did before with link to and form with, we can see that button to is going to create some HTML for us. And the HTML that the button creates is actually a form. So a button is essentially a form with one input. It's a form that just has that submit button. There's nothing for you to type or select. It's just a single button. We can also see that by default, this button has a method of post and an action of /artist. So by default, the method is going to be post, and by default, the action is whatever page you are currently on. So we're currently on the artist index, so that's where those two pieces of data are coming from. By convention, we don't want this to post to /artist. We want this to be a delete request to this specific artist's URI. So let's give our button to another argument. So the second argument we're going to give it is the path. So let's make this /artist and then interpolate our artist ID. And then we'll give it a second keyword argument for method of delete. And let's go ahead and run that again with the save it. We'll leave the save and open page in there. And we'll do the same thing, inspect it. And we can see now our form for our button has a method of post and an action of /artist/38. So that action is looking good. That looks like a specific artist URI, but the method is still post. Well, notice that the form now has an extra input underneath that is a hidden type, which has a value of, or a name of _method and a value of delete. So this is how Rails gets around making a delete form. So in true HTML, you can't actually have a method of delete for your forms. This is kind of how Rails fakes doing that. Under the hood, it's going to do a lot of things to kind of mess around with that. But we will see that our params will actually be very nice and neat. So let's go ahead and make that route. So our last error was no route matches delete. And while we're at it, let's go ahead and open up our destroy spec and take out that save and open page. So we'll make our route. And so we'll say delete to /artist/ID, :ID. And we'll route this to the artist destroy action. Great, let's run the test again and see where that gets us. So we get the action could not be found. So let's go to the controller, artist controller, and we'll add in our destroy method above our private definition. And run it again. And so now we're expecting the current path to be /artist, but it's actually the specific artist URI. So let's redirect to /artists and run this again. So now it says expected not to find text prints in our page. So this makes sense. We would expect our destroy action to destroy the artist, but it's not doing that. It's just redirecting back to the artist index. So let's put a pry into our destroy action. And run that again. And let's look at what params we have. So now we can see our method delete coming over in the params. And we see that ID of 42 coming through. So let's go ahead and copy line 15 for finding the artist. And so once we find that artist object, we can destroy it. So let's say this doesn't need to be an instance variable. Let's take out the @ and let's say artist.destroy. And let's run our test again. And it's now passing. To double check our development environment, let's run a Rails server. And let's refresh. Oh, that was the save and open page. We can't refresh that. So we'll go to /artists. And let's click one of those delete buttons. and they're gone. So we've been talking about the params hash as this bucket that collects all of the data that's being passed in a request. So far, we have seen, Jameson, could you go to the routes file?
Mhm.
So far, we've seen data passed in two different ways. So all of the dynamic segments in this routes file with the colon in front of the segment, that indicates that is the dynamic segment that appears in our params hash. So that is one place where something gets put into the bucket. Another place that we've seen is in a form. So could we go to the new, one of our new views? These text fields that we're getting and any sort of input fields that you put in your forms, that's another piece of data that would just get put into that bucket. Let's go ahead and talk about one more that you're going to see. Let's go to the browser to demonstrate this. So another way that you can pass data is with query params. So a query param is part of the URL. So if you go to that URL, Jameson, and you put a question mark, you can create key value pairs using this question mark. So let's say, let's just make up some, let's say foo equals bar. And then let's put a pry into our controller. Let's put this at the top of the index action. So if we visit the index again, we should be able to hit that pry. So let's go ahead and click enter. So the route, the path is still, we got to run our server. So the path is still /artists, but now it has this additional query param of foo equals bar. So now if we look at our params, now we can see that key value pair of foo equals bar being passed over. And then if you wanted to pass multiple params, we could do that with an ampersand. So we put in an ampersand, and then we could say name, let's say name equals Brian. And we'll do the same, let's exit out of our pry, and now visit that URL, look at our params. And now we can see both of those params being passed. So another place where data gets added into that params bucket. All right, so now that we've got everything working, let's go ahead and do a git status, and we'll get everything added and pushed up. It looks like all these files were part of this feature. So let's do a git add dot, and we'll do a git commit -m, and we'll say adds delete function for artists. Yep. And we'll push it up to our branch. So push origin artist new. We did call it artist new. Yeah, it looks good. We called it artist new, and we did some other things besides artist new. I'm not too concerned with the name of the branch as so much I am with having good commit messages. Let's go to GitHub now. And we'll go to our new setlist app. And we see our artist new has recent changes, so we can compare and pull requests. And normally we would want to do a lot more review, but just for time's sake, we'll go ahead and create this pull request. And we'll go ahead and merge it. Confirm that merge. And then from our local Git repository, let's check out our main branch. Let's pull from origin main. Let's run rspec.
Oops.
And there's something that we probably wanted to take out.
Mm-hmm.
So let's take that out. And let's go ahead and add that. And we'll commit that. And let's push this directly to the main branch. So normally you don't want to push directly to main, but because this was not a code, this was not a piece of code that we added, this was just removing something, I feel comfortable with that. Can we run RSpec again? And double, triple check that everything is still green and passing. And it looks good.
Awesome.